Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hey everybody, welcome to Truth and Liberty. It's going to be a great show today. Hey, I wanted to mention a couple of things to you before we get started in our monologue. First, I want to tell you that we have a free gift for you today. If you have not previously subscribed to Truth and Liberty or to Andrew Womack Ministries email newsletter, you can go to the Truth and Liberty page on Gospel Truth Network's website. It's GTN TV, and share your email address with us, and we will send you a free copy of Andrew's booklet, How to Stay Positive in a Negative World. What an awesome booklet this is. What an awesome title this is. You know, by focusing on God and His Word in the midst of difficulty and circumstances, and always speaking that out of our mouth, we can overcome the tribulations of this life and stay positive in a negative world. So you want to be sure to take advantage of this gift. Share your email address with us, and you'll sign up for our newsletter and get this free gift in the mail. So I encourage you guys to do that. Hey, the other thing I wanted to mention today, if you're looking for somewhere where you can sow your finances for the work of the kingdom, there's nowhere better, in my opinion, than Truth and Liberty. We are every day fighting the fight for truth in the public square, equipping Christians, equipping believers around this nation and actually around the world, holding major events and conferences, developing a world-class website with a research center, publishing articles, blogs, and doing many, many other things. So I encourage you, if you're not a partner or what we call a member of Truth and Liberty, you can become one today by going to the Truth and Liberty website, and that's truthandliberty.net, and signing up to make an automatic recurring contribution of $5 or more per month, and you will be an integral part of helping us to turn America around and back to biblical values. So would you prayerfully consider becoming a Truth and Liberty member today? Thank you so much. Hey guys, listen, today's show is going to be phenomenal. I have a brand new guest lined up for you today to talk about an exciting new development out there, a program that I think has the real potential to be a transformative influence in our nation in the long term. And I'm talking about our public schools. When it comes to discipling a nation, there's really nowhere where you can have more influence than in our school system. Do you know that we have 80 million children in America's public schools today? These kids are going to school 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And they're being, unfortunately, they're not being taught to think from a biblical worldview. They're not being taught accurate history and true history. They're being indoctrinated in so many ways in a progressive ideology, Marxist ideology, LGBT ideology, and so many other destructive things. Take for example, evolution. All 80 million children of this nation are being taught every single day that they are an accident, that they were not created by an almighty loving God who has a plan for their life. No, they're being taught that they evolved from monkeys, that they came out of originally some primordial soup by happenstance, maybe got struck by lightning. They came into existence as some collection of proteins that somehow became life, somehow became this, that, and oh look, here we are as humans, how lucky we are. But did you know they also are being taught that there's no purpose because there's no God, because there's no truth? There's no such thing as truth. American children today are being taught there's no such thing as truth. That's called nihilism. Used to be just moral relativism, where the liberals would say, well, you can't really say that something is right or wrong in every situation. Now they've gone beyond that to the logical conclusion of saying there's really no truth at all, and that you can do and be whatever you want. My goodness, you can even be a different sex if you want to. Our kids, 80 million of them in America today, are being taught every day of the week that sex is a figment of your imagination. Gender is a subjective issue. And if you feel like a girl, you can be a girl. If you feel like a boy, you can pretend to be a boy. And you know what? We're going to make everybody around you go along with your delusion and tell you that you're a boy or a girl when you're not. And you know what? You can even have a surgery. And we won't even tell your parents about it. You can go and get yourself, cut up by a doctor and make the outside look a little bit like a boy or a girl or whatever you want to call it. And that's all good because this is affirming care. Folks, this is the state of our schools today in America. Do you know our children are being taught that America's founding fathers were not great men, We're not moral leaders. We're not Christians. They're being taught that these men were bigots, were slaveholders, were in it for the money, that they were oppressive colonialists who hated Indians and black people, right? And that the whole Constitution is a fraud. This is what they're being taught today. How are we going to survive as a republic? How in the world are we going to be a light to the world if we're raising generations of people today in our country who think there is no God, that they're an accident, that homosexuality is a good thing, and that America is an evil, racist country? I tell you what, it's a system that is designed to ruin us. It is designed to bring us to nothing because it's been put in place over a long period of time by Marxists. Now, what am I talking about? Karl Marx was he was a Jew in Europe who became a Christian and then rejected the faith and became an atheist and came up with a theory called communism, Marxist communism. It's an idea that at its root says there is no God, there is no meaning to life, except that we all produce wealth and we have a right to equality, not just equal opportunity under the law, but equal outcomes. And the state is the one that gives us that equality. So we worship nothing but the state. And the state has the power to make everybody equal by owning everything and controlling all decisions of human life. This is communism. It's wicked, it's satanic, it produces death, destruction, murder, mayhem, and poverty, no matter where it goes throughout history. It's been tried many times and it always has the same result. But Marxists decided they knew and recognized that Christianity, and specifically the Christianity in the United States of America, was its number one enemy and number one obstacle. And they set about many decades ago to bring down the United States of America. How many of you remember the video of Nikita Khrushchev at the United Nations pounding his shoe on the podium saying, "We will destroy you"? They knew they wouldn't do it with bullets and guns and by a physical army invading our country. But they concocted a strategy to invade our arenas of influence, our movies, our television, our universities, our colleges, our schools, even our seminaries, and begin to sow the seeds of destruction, of atheism, moral relativism, secularism. And we are so far down that path that it's absolutely scary. I believe, though, that God is doing a new work in America. I believe that a great awakening is underway. I believe that Americans are waking up to the truth and coming back to our roots. But it's just beginning. But there are many exciting things going on in our country today. But at the root of it all, we have to retake our school system because we have generations that are being educated and raised up to believe in things that are absolutely contrary to what America is all about, absolutely contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ and to the Bible. You know, our founders understood the essential nature of education. Abraham Lincoln said, "The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of government in the next." If we look at our founding fathers, Benjamin Rush was considered the third most influential founding father that we had. And he was never elected to public office, but he was a delegate to the Continental Congress and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was a physician and a doctor and an educator. He founded the first American Bible Society. And he wrote a pamphlet called The Defense of the Use of Bible in Schools. Think about that for a second. Benjamin Rush, founding father, said we need to use the Bible in schools. He said the Bible contains more knowledge necessary to man in his present state than any other book in the world. That knowledge is most durable and religious instruction most useful when imparted early in life. The Bible, when not read in schools, is seldom read in any other subsequent period of life. Benjamin Rush was advocating for the use of Bibles in schools. He's actually defending its use because the Bible was already used in schools. In fact, the very first public education law in America is called the Old Deluder Satan Act, passed in Plymouth Colony, maybe Massachusetts Bay Colony, not sure, same region. But the colonists during that time recognized that the children of the nation of America needed to learn to read the Bible so that they could resist that old deluder, Satan, so they could resist the deceptions of the enemy. If they couldn't read the Bible, then there was no way for them to know deception, much less to resist it. So they founded public schools for the sole purpose of teaching kids to read the Bible. The most common textbook in America in the founding era was something called the New England Primer. It was a little book about this big, about that thick, and it taught kids how to read and taught them using Bible stories. Taught them the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and with each letter, they would refer to some Bible story. Like in Adam's fall, we sinned all, right? And it went through the entire gospel with school kids, simultaneously teaching them to read. The most widely used textbook in America. The Bible was foundational to education in this country for 150 years. Did you know that Benjamin Rush also said this? Now, this is a lengthy quote, but I want you to bear with me. He said, "The only foundation for a useful education in a republic is to be laid in religion. Without this, there can be no virtue, and without virtue, there can be no liberty. And liberty is the object and life of all republican governments. We waste so much time and money in punishing crimes and take so little pains to prevent them. We profess to be Republicans, and yet we neglect the only means of establishing and perpetuating our Republican forms of government, that is, the universal education of our youth in the principles of Christianity." You see, this whole notion that kids can't read the Bible, can't pray in school, is a myth. The Founding Fathers, the same people that passed the First Amendment to the Constitution, are the people that were teaching kids to read in public schools using the Bible. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Marxism, moral relativism, and Darwinism began to spread throughout America and the world. John Dewey, who's heralded today as a great educator and the founder of the modern public education movement, was also an atheist and a secular humanist. He understood that in order for his secularist utopia to be imposed upon the United States, they had to capture the minds of the youth. And so he said schools should take an active part, I'm quoting now, in the directing the social change and share in the construction of a new social order. He said, there is no God and there is no soul. Therefore, there is no need for the props of traditional religion. This is John Dewey, for whom so many public schools are named today in America. These seeds of atheism and destructive secular humanism and Marxism that pervade our schools today have gone back a long time, folks. And we as the church have to rise up and take this back. Did you know that prayer was kicked out of schools in 1963 in the Supreme Court case of Engel v. Vitale? 2 years later, the Bible was kicked out in a case called Abington School District versus Shemp. A few years later, the Ten Commandments were kicked out in Stone v. Graham. And we've been living for decades now in this secular environment in our schools, and what do we have to show for it? Suicide is rampant among our teenagers. Sexually transmitted diseases, crime, homosexuality, transgenderism, ignorance, failure, loneliness. We need to shake this off and get back to our foundations. Great things are actually happening in America today. The United States Supreme Court has decided some cases that have reopened the door and laid the foundation for real progress. One of them is Kennedy versus Bremerton School District in Washington, where the court said that a high school football coach could pray at the 50-yard line after school football games, and students could join him without limitation because it's his constitutional right, and many other cases. One of the most exciting things that I've heard about recently is the School Chaplain movement. And here to talk with us today about this is the founder of the National School Chaplain Association, Rocky Malloy. Now, Rocky was born again at the age of 10, and as he entered the U.S. Merchant Marine, and as a commander, he got involved in an attempt to help indigenous people in Mexico, and he ended up getting thrown in prison with a life sentence. God delivered him 3 days later in a miraculous fashion, and Rocky later, in efforts to help people, ended up at odds with the government, I think, of Bolivia. Got thrown in jail again. Ultimately, he met his wife-to-be. They began ministering to children in the area of Nicaragua during the Sandinista Civil War in the 1980s. And Rocky began putting kids in school and chaplains in schools to help the kids stay in school and stay out of the corrupt influences of the communists. He's going to talk to us more about this chaplain movement that began to spread and that ultimately got into over 33,000 schools in Central and South America, and now with amazing results. And Rocky's going to talk about this, so I'm so excited to have him on the program. So we're going to take a little break now, and after the break, we're going to sit down with Rocky and talk about the National School Chaplains Association and the new law that was passed in Texas and in Florida and that is already seeing amazing results. I believe this program is going to be one of those keys that's going to turn our country around. So don't go away. We'll be right back with Rocky Malloy, the founder and president of the National School Chaplains Association. This might not sound interesting, but I promise you, you won't want to miss this interview. It's going to be awesome. Are you passionate about standing for truth in the culture, but don't know how to get started? Well, Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate, unify, and mobilize the body of Christ to stand for truth in the public square. And as part of our mission, we provide you with an amazing array of resources on our website. And our website has just been revamped, remodeled, and retooled to be user-friendly. And I'm so excited about it because I believe that there's nothing like it out there anywhere. I want to encourage you today to go to truthandliberty.net and check out the Resources Center and the Get Equipped Center. On our Resources Center, you will find hundreds of links, hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, even America's original founding documents can be found on Truth and Liberty's Resources Center. It's searchable by topic, preset topic, or you can put in a custom search to find exactly what you need and what you're interested in. In the Get Equipped section, we link you to tools created by our strategic partners, including Pray, Vote, and Engage tools. We culture impact teams, civic action teams, biblical citizenship in modern America, biblical worldview training, and more. So go today to truthandliberty.net and find what you need to get equipped to stand for truth in the public square. All right, well, welcome back on Truth and Liberty. My special guest today is a new friend, Rocky Malloy. He's the president and founder of the National School Chaplains Association. And Rocky has really a fascinating background and a long history in a different kind of missionary work, you might say. Rocky, thank you for coming on the show today. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you again.
Well, so brother, I want our folks to hear about your background because it sounds like something we could make a movie out of. As a young man, you got saved at a young age, 10 years old, but you ended up joining the Merchant Marine and then found yourself helping indigenous people in Mexico. Can you kind of take us from that point? What happened?
Well, as the commander, I was up in the bridge of my ship and I saw something happening far enough away where I could see it, but I couldn't hear what was going on. I could just see people really upset. And the Mexican government had pushed a whole little town off a cliff. And maybe they were, taking over land they shouldn't have. I don't know what all the problems were, but it was the people there that lost everything, they're very upset. So I went there to ask them what they needed for help. And, on TV, people go, okay, we need food and blankets. These people said we wanted guns. They were mad. So I said, okay, I got guns. What do you got? But I could just give them a few guns, but if they wanted to arm themselves, they needed guns from the entire harbor. So they said, well, we got high-grade marijuana. So I started trafficking the weed from them to the munitions and all these ships in the harbor and turned into a civil war.
Oh, my goodness. Well, and so that's really incredible. And I guess the Mexican authorities didn't care for that, and you ended up in jail.
They took a very dim view of... They charged me with conspiracy to overthrow the national government, international drug smuggling, and some lesser charges. Yeah, I was sentenced to life in prison.
Well, obviously you didn't stay there. What happened?
Well, the morning I showed up, they hung 3 people that were with me. So I got their deathbed confession, so to speak, in a cage that night. And so, I was totally guilty. I was so guilty, there was no trial. There was just a magistrate just sent me to life in prison. And then later that afternoon, man, I was miraculously released. I was pardoned. I was arrested, sentenced, and pardoned in 72 hours.
Wow. Well, how did that happen? Just real quick, did some political friend intervene, or was it just like an angel of the Lord made it happen? I mean, how did you get set loose like that?
Well, you know what? I have no idea what happened, but there was an American prisoner there. The only other American that was this, we're talking about southern Mexico in Oaxaca, right? You're talking about the desert prison there. There was one other American. The first time I saw him, they were electrocuting him as they cut body parts off in his prison for punishment. Anyway, so when they tell me I'm leaving, because there had been quite a bit of drama before about them shooting me, and they hung these other people, a lot of violent stuff happening. I thought they were just going to take me somewhere else to assassinate me or kill me. So I didn't really think I was going to be free. So I'm standing on the one side of this cyclone fence, a chain link fence, and the American was on the other side, and we knew where they're going to see each other again. So we put our fingers through the fence. And at that moment, there's a voice behind me that says, I've set you free, now go do my work. Now he's looking straight into thin air, and he goes, what was that? I look around and go, I don't know. But at that moment, I'm thinking, I've got a get out of jail card from God. I can do anything. So that's how I ended up getting in bigger and bigger trouble, thinking, okay, God's going to save me. And he did every time.
Wow, man. Well, what happened next? My notes are saying you went to Bolivia and started to help people there.
It was kind of the same scenario where I see these really poor people. They're under the tyranny of the government, and inflation at that time was like 1,000%. They had people in banks with chalk and erasers changing the exchange rate every 15 minutes. I mean, it was terrible. So, I was unfortunately very cardinally minded Christian, thinking military was the way to resolve this. And so I got hooked up with a guy who was the bodyguard of a U.S. agent. He happened to be the grandson of Pancho Villa, the revolutionary in Mexico. So it was in his bloodline. So, man, we got together and we started planning another revolution.
Wow. Well, and again, I guess Bolivia didn't like that, and you end up in jail. And what happens then?
Well, you would think I'd have figured it out, but God kept saving me, because I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I'm on a mission from God, kind of like the Blues Brothers. And so, but the last time was it. I'm thinking, okay, it was just a mercy of God, because now U.S. agents are tracking me. Things are happening in America. I mean, I become a wanted person.
Wow. And
you can't be involved in revolution and, arming people and being a gun runner and all that and not expect some pushback. So, yeah, I decided, okay, I need to lay it down.
All right. And then, then I want to get to your ministry, Rocky. After that, you're still in Central America, but this time you're in Nicaragua. So what happens there?
Yeah, so I'm in the combat zone in the Nicaraguan Civil War, the Sandinista thing. And it's really, Richard, the communists are using incendiary artillery on children and women. All the men are dead. They died early in the war, right? And so I was, as a merchant marine officer, I had some medical training. So they had the traditional MASH, mobile Army hospitals there, that were attending to the combatants. But after all the soldiers were taken care of, they would deal with the civilians. And that day, my job was triage. People closer to death, really burned horribly. They were closer to the tent, and then ones less burned or less critical were further away. And just looking at all these little kids all burned up, and they were Mosquito Indians. So in their culture, you didn't cry; they just whimpered, and horrific, things happened to them. So something happened to me, man. I'm thinking, this is just so unrighteous for this to happen to kids, and then kids are being trucked off. Things are happening to children. I thought it was the United Nations. turned out, maybe it was them or not, but these kids are being sold into slavery, these war orphans. So it took me months to figure out just the beginning of all this tragedy. So I didn't really say it out loud, but I dedicated my life to protect these children.
Mm. And you ended up meeting your wife. You'll have to say her name for me again. I think it's Joska. And
yeah.
And then in the process of trying to help these Nicaraguan children, you guys discover something essential about keeping kids in school.
Yeah, she was a Dutch nurse. She was there. Actually, her group was sympathetic to the Sandinistas. I remember we had a long discussion about, Contras and Sandinistas and all that. She came over, she's conservative now. Anyway, yeah, you know what? If children were in school, that was the common denominator to being less likely to fall victim of sex trafficking, slavery, or organ harvest. When you talk to little kids who've had some of their organs taken, you're looking into a face of terror that it's hard to describe. Mm. So anyway, yeah. So then the goal became to keep children in school.
And so how did you go from sort of that realization to the idea of having school chaplains?
Well, we started off as a curriculum because schools needed more like character development and stuff. So we built a Bible-based character development program from pre-K to 12th grade, and it was running pretty strong in Bolivia and Paraguay and some other nations. And then the communists swept through. And it was like within a few years, every government had installed communist leadership. It's very interesting, the voting systems and the whole voting thing that went down. That's probably another discussion. But we were left with a communist government. So they kicked it out. They didn't want anything to do with God.
So
we had
people
to adjust.
make sure people connect the dots. Communism kicks God out of schools. Okay, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, because communism cannot coexist with God. This is, in case people don't know it, in communist countries, you worship the government.
Yes.
It's government worship because they are the supplier of your needs, even though they're horrific at supplying those needs. Anyway, so Christianity cannot coexist because God actually delivers. So they can't have that competition. So they just kill or kick out all the God people. So our program was kicked out, but we'd already formed a pretty strong alliance with the parents. So chaplains became a way to keep a God witness in school, even though the material was outlawed.
I see. And so, yeah, tell us more. How many schools were you in? How many countries? What kind of results were you seeing?
We started off with 3 schools. 99 kids. I mean, that was just a tiny little start. But we had a Bible school, and we told our Bible school students in order to graduate, it was a 3-year school, we said in order to graduate, you had to become a volunteer teacher, and you had to deliver this content in school. So one time we had 634 volunteer substitute teachers working in schools to deliver this Bible content. And it was going pretty good. And then the government didn't like that either. So we had to continually adapt and change. And some of the Catholic Church and some of the church groups and denominations, they were in schools, but they didn't have the ability to adapt like we did because they were more entrenched in their position. We were fluid. We could change. And so the ability to change quick and adapt to the situation put us in schools even stronger. And today, these same communist governments have accredited us, and there's 10,000 schools on a waiting list.
That's amazing. And I saw in getting ready for the show that your chaplaincy program in Central America and South America is in 33,000 schools and did I see 23 countries?
Every Spanish-speaking country in the world, plus Brazil, which is Portuguese, has our program. We're ministering to over 30 million people every day through school chaplains.
Wow. And so let's talk about then sort of why you're here back in the USA, in Houston. I think you came back in when the early 2000s or whatever, but now you're trying to get, and not trying, you are instituting a school chaplaincy programs here in the United States.
Richard, what happened was the State Board of Education in Texas saw what we were doing overseas. They saw up to 80% reduction in teen pregnancies, increase in graduation, school campuses were significantly safer, teachers stayed on the job, less attrition. They go, hey, why don't we do that in Texas? And there was a lot of confusion about, is it legal or not? So Amazonian missionary me, I'm having a conference with senators and their legal teams explaining why chaplaincy is absolutely legal. They were concerned. I said, look, man, there's 10,000 federal chaplains. The state of Texas, every state, California, New York included, have chaplains on the payroll. Why are we discriminating against teachers and students by not providing them the same spiritual care? And they go, yeah, why not? So that's how it happened.
So, you got a bill passed in the state of Texas called the Texans Chaplain Act, SB 763. If anybody's taking notes and you want to get a copy of that bill, just jump online, SB 763. I bet you also have it, Rocky, on your website. But this bill in the state of Texas, it got passed and signed by the governor, 2 years ago, or when did it get passed?
In 2023.
All right, so a year or two ago, and now it's legal in the state of Texas to have chaplains in public schools whose expenses, salaries, and so forth are actually paid for by the state.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Wow, so tell me what's going on. How's that going? Are you seeing good results yet?
Well, it kind of took people by shock. First of all, they were arguing, oh, you can't do it. And then, bam, it becomes law. And the law did not make it legal. The law just provided the funding. And then other states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and California go, whoa, you mean we could have chaplains too, even without the law, because there's no law against volunteer chaplains in any state. So then it started creating a groundswell of chaplaincy in schools, whether legislation or passed or not, but there's 20 states working on the legislation right now.
Wow.
So it's become a movement because moms and dads want someone in school whose only job is to protect their child.
Well, that's an incredible statement there. But so tell us about your program then. How does this work? What are these chaplains doing? And I'd like to know if you've got any data yet that's showing their effectiveness.
Well, we have a lot of data from overseas, but it's just now winding up. This was the first school year where a few school districts have decided to move into that arena. More are coming. Our biggest challenge is to recruit people to become chaplains. So we've graduated a couple hundred people out of our training systems and certified them. And this coming school year, we look to have significantly more chaplains in force, and they have to fill in daily reports. And those reports will give us the data we need to substantiate the value they have. For instance, Australia has a very successful National School Chaplain program. The government pays for it, and they collect the same data. So we're collecting very similar data points as they do, and they have survived multiple lawsuits. You can't have God in school, blah, all that kind of stuff. And they survived because of the data they have is so strong. And so that's the same data we'll be collecting.
Well, tell me about some of their data.
Well, for instance, suicide, that's a big issue, man. Number one cause of death in every state in the United States, or drug overdose, which I think is very similar, same thing. So the reason chaplains are so powerful is because you don't need an appointment. They're casual conversations and they're confidential conversations. They don't go on your school record or the holy grail of the transcript. The chaplains are in the hallways and the lunchrooms. They're outside watching who comes to school, who leaves the school, who picking them up, what cars are they going in. And so it's so easy. And chaplains, they're identified. They have chaplains on their shirts. Our chaplains have a first responder badge. It's so easy just to talk to the chaplain in a very casual way. And it can be private, but chaplains are not in offices. They're at large. So they're so easy to talk to. Generally, they're the nature of person that they're friendly and everything. And kids open up and teachers open up and talk about things that are concerning them. And it gives a forewarning. If you talk to parents whose children have taken their lives, the vast majority is just a shock. They just find them dead. They have no warning. And the chaplain is exactly the person, the same reason they're on a military base, is to intercept those types of thoughts and actions.
You know, in America, we've had chaplains since the beginning of the nation. Chaplains in the United States Congress, chaplains in the Continental Congress. George Washington instituted chaplains in the Continental Army. And we have, chaplains in many different many different elected bodies across America. And so why not schools, right? What's the difference? Aren't teachers and our school children, aren't they entitled to that same access and service that we give to our elected officials? Are you finding that argument is effective as people wonder about the legality of this program?
That is an effective argument. Look at UAW. People would consider it a very leftist union. They've had chaplains for 20 years because it reduces accidents, reduces absenteeism, keeps people on the job, and it increases job satisfaction. Why are we discriminating against some of the most important segment of our society, public school teachers, by not giving them the same spiritual care we do first responders and even guys building cars? Last year, there was over 1 million felony assaults on teachers from students. Wow. You don't hear a lot about that. There was a lady in Oklahoma, I know you're from Oklahoma, a third grader almost killed her with a fire extinguisher and permanent brain damage from a third grade kid. So teachers are under the same level of stress when they test them on average as first responders. And you think about ambulance drivers, police, and fire, you think, man, they have a lot of stress. Teachers test at the same level, but we don't give them the same resources of spiritual care as we do everybody else. Why are we discriminating?
So Rocky, in your program, National School Chaplains Association, are you training and certifying these chaplains before they enter into the public schools? How can states and the public have confidence that these folks are qualified to be in these positions?
Like young people coming out of your Bible school, they would qualify to become a chaplain candidate. And then with about 80 hours of training specifically designed to appropriate their ministry skills in a public school setting, then they're certified. They have to have a letter of endorsement from their pastor. They can't have a felony arrest. You think, some pretty common sense things. And then it gives an opportunity for a person, young or old, to then take on a ministry which is substantially larger and more impactful than the average church.
Where you're walking around a school of 3,000 to maybe 2,000 or 3,000 students and hundreds of teachers, you've got a chance to just shine the light of God in the midst of all of that darkness. And are you finding that this program is bringing God back into our schools, just to put it bluntly?
Absolutely, man. It's going to be a revival. Texas just passed what's called the Blue Bonnet Learning Curriculum, where the Bible is part of the standardized curriculum for the first time in 70 years. And you got a lot of teachers out there who don't know anything about the Bible. So the chaplain's going to become a key asset to helping those teachers deliver biblical content.
That's awesome. And so, have you had any challenges? Anybody fighting against you legally or otherwise?
Well, there was a lot of people pushing back on me from Washington, D.C., right out of the White House, man. You know, I was classified as a what do they call it? A Christian nationalist. I was a Christian nationalist in Washington newspapers, and they're all saying bad stuff about me. But all the lawsuits, none of them happened because some of the biggest law firms in the United States wrote them letters saying, we dare you to sue school chaplains. You're going to have to take on the Department of Defense, Veteran Affairs, every hospital and airport in the country. And when you finish going through them, then we'll take you on.
So this law that got passed in Texas, Rocky, SB 763, did it authorize other kinds of service providers in the schools along with chaplains?
No, it was straight up chaplain bill.
Straight up
but
chaplains.
It did say chaplains could be like, they could be security officers, and there's other functions they could serve as a chaplain.
Well, so I'm sure parents out there who aren't really believers or whatever might be worried of, oh, you're going to be forcing religion on my child. Have you encountered that argument at all? And is there any merit to that?
There's no merit to it. I was an expert witness in Georgia Senate, and one of the senators or somebody was pushing back with that argument. So he asked this lady, he said, ma'am, if a football coach walks down the hallway, does that mean you got to play football? She went, bah. He said, you can just sit down now. So that's couldn't believe. So no, it's the chaplains operate as an invited guest on campus. They don't generally start a conversation unless they see a child doing something or adult they probably shouldn't be doing. You know, like there's somebody's got guns in their car. Okay, the chaplain go out there, hey, you know, you got weapons in your automobile on the school campus. So people want to talk to the chaplain. It's a volunteer thing. And if a chaplain is talking to a student that's like a Muslim or something like that, or maybe a Jewish student, then they say, hey, you want to get an imam or a rabbi on the phone, or can I help you connect with them? Their job is not an evangelist. People misinterpret that. A trained chaplain, they're a God representative. They're the spiritual person on campus. They're not the Billy Graham.
Well, so do they have limitations on their ability to share the gospel with students when it's appropriate to do so?
Well, thanks to President Trump and President Clinton, both have executive orders that say that you can share the gospel with the intent of conversion as part of your First Amendment rights. And those two executive orders have never been challenged. So yes, based on executive orders, you're free to share your testimony or your faith.
Well, and so just make sure it's clear, everybody knows, these chaplains, they're not like teaching Bible classes or holding mandatory student assemblies or anything like that where everybody has to come and submit to Bible teaching. But they're accessible, and students are able to approach them voluntarily and share their needs and burdens and other things with them. Is that how it works?
Right. Coercion is the word. There is zero coercion. Mm-hmm. Now, for instance, in Texas, there's 1,300 Bible clubs that cannot find place because there's no teacher sponsor. In that case, the chaplain could be the sponsor, but that's a student-led activity after school, right? But if the football coach says, hey, chaplain, come bring us a word, they can do it. I mean, we have way more religious liberty than we're living.
That's absolutely true. And I had some stats in my notes that I took off your website, but you were saying that now this must be overseas because I don't think you've had it in America long enough to know this, but graduation rates increased 37%, dropout rates dropped correspondingly. So kids are actually staying in school and finishing just because they have access to a chaplain?
Yeah, and the biggest number are women, young girls, because they're not getting pregnant. That's a huge number.
Wow.
Young girls get pregnant at an alarming rate. And they're not like America where you got nurseries and stuff in high school. These girls drop out. And so these countries are losing the brain trust, the wisdom of women. They're not finishing school. So when they don't get pregnant, guess what? And then we train the chaplains to talk to young people about vision and goals and purpose, which unfortunately they're not getting a lot of. So when you ask a young girl, for instance, what do you want to do when you get out of school? Nobody ever asked them that question before. So we help them. You want to be an astronaut, ballerina, pick something. And no matter what they pick, the next question is, what would have to happen? I'd have to graduate from high school. You just want, that's it. All right, so no matter what you want to be, you're going to have to graduate from high school first. Mm-hmm. And then they break up with the boys because they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And it allows them to finish school.
Well, one of the other stats, Rocky, I saw on your site is that parental engagement in the kids' school activities and everything in education was up 500%. Can you talk to me about that?
You know what? That hit us completely by surprise. But what happened was when a chaplain goes into a school, it's somebody representing the interest of the parents. And so there's animosity between the teachers and the parents. Kid comes home with bad grades. The parents are blaming the teacher. The teachers are blaming the parents. The kid's probably pretty guilty too. But when the chaplain comes in, they build unity around the best interest of the child. And now because the parents believe they have a true asset on campus, they're more interested in what's going on. So it created a lot more parent involvement, which significantly improved education.
Well, here in America, I think one of the most alarming stats about our public education system, I mean, you've got dropout rates and you've got illiteracy rates and you've got underperforming students and all these other problems, but one of the most alarming ones, if not the most, is the suicide rate among our teens and our young people today. It's just unbelievable to me how many are attempting suicide and actually succeeding and so on. Where you've had the chaplaincy program, even if it is overseas, what happens to teen suicide?
Zero. So professionals have a hard time with that number. You mean in a database of 30 million people, 33,000 plus schools, you've had zero reported suicide? With any school with a chaplain for 2 years or more, we pay people on the outside and we pay an internal team. Their only job is to call schools and collect this data. And it's had a phenomenal impact on hopelessness. If a chaplain does anything, it's a person that delivers a little sunshine and some hope. And according to the data we have, 5 seconds just calling a child by their name and recognizing they exist can be the difference between life and death.
Wow. You know, here in our home state where we are at Underwhelming Ministries in Colorado, it's a left-wing government, and they are pushing hard to have psychiatric care, full-level mental health professionals in every school in Colorado. I haven't seen any stats on that yet, Rocky, but that seems like sort of like the devil's version of this. But you're saying all you got to do is having a chaplain there, and in 2 years' time, you're not going to have any suicides.
Well, let me give you some real data. Coming out of the University of Columbia, Dr. Lisa Miller, who happens to be a Jewish lady, she testified before Congress that not having spiritual cares provided by chaplains actually creates mental disease. So our schools are creating mental illness because they're not providing spiritual care. As you mentioned, when they kicked out prayer, 10 Commandments, and all that stuff, they created mental illness. So now when they take students to these mental health professionals, which according to national data I have, 94% of them are woke. They're just reinforcing bad decision of the children. When a chaplain's on campus, they have an opportunity to give an alternative life view, which is saving lives.
Well, that's the thing, right? So we're teaching our kids from the earliest days, there is no God, you have no purpose, you're an accident, there's no truth, there's no morality, you can do what you want with your body, and all this other garbage, and they end up being depressed, lonely, alienated, wanting to kill themselves. And what's the state's solution? Well, let's bring in professionals who are trained to reinforce those very same ideas. And so, but what you're saying is give kids access to someone who can share with them good news that you do have a purpose, you do have a maker and a creator who loves you, and that God can help you through this and everything else. And it's all 100% voluntary, and you're seeing amazing results. Did I summarize it accurately?
You put it right on the head. You know what? And here's the scary thing. Suicide now is evolving into homicide. How many school shootings have we seen from angry or bitter young people? And it's the same cause. The system that you so eloquently described in your monologue is creating children who not only kill themselves, but kill other children.
Yeah.
This got to stop. And a chaplain's not going to solve everything, but just like you said, it's the first step into bringing righteousness and hope back into schools.
So, brother, tell us what your website is and what can people find when they go there?
Our website is campuschaplains.org. campuschaplains.org. And when you go there, if you're interested in learning about how to be a school chaplain, what the training is and all that, or if you want chaplains in your school, what needs to happen, what steps you can take, or if you want legislation passed in your state, we also support that. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 20 states involved, but every state in the United States can have a chaplain.
So let me back up, because our information we just put up there, Rocky, the website was a little bit different than what you said. So can we put that lower third up here? Again, what we do have is National School Chaplains Association.org, but you gave us a different website that's a little bit simpler. What was that?
Campuschaplains.org. The one you have will work. But it's really long, and when I'm on an interview like this, so it's people, if you put Chaplains, you go to Australia, because that's the name. Okay. Anyway, so National School Chaplains Association.org, that works, but Campus Chaplains is simpler.
Campuschaplains.org. And so if I'm a parent out there, Rocky, in some state where we don't have school chaplains, but I think it's an awesome idea, and I want to see what I can learn about making that happen in my school district or maybe statewide, what do I do?
You can go there, you can call us if you like, get in touch with us, and then we can start networking you with other people of like minds, or we can help you lead the charge. And look, a real entry point are people that are already on school payroll, and then they get trained as a chaplain.
Okay.
We're calling that Operation Bookend. We're working it in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California. So now just think, people already in the teachers union are becoming certified school chaplains.
Wow. And
our legal guys are all lined up. If they try to touch that chaplain, that's a legal definition. They can't touch them.
So I'm a PE teacher in a public school, and I love the Lord. I want to be a chaplain. I can do both legally?
Oh, absolutely, you can do both legally. The state or the school cannot restrict your religious activity. If you happen to be a certified school chaplain, guess what? Now you've got legal protection to operate in that school, whether the school agreed to it or not.
Oh, I bet the devil hates this, Rocky.
Oh, yeah.
That is awesome, man. And so let's say that, so people are out there watching right now, and they're like, well, I'm a teacher, or I'm a custodian, or I'm a coach or whatever in public schools, administrator. I want to learn more. They go to your website. Can they find out how they can get trained and certified?
Yes, it'll give you a very clear. We offer a free course so you can know exactly what the rules are, how you would qualify or what would disqualify you. You're driving a bus, man, and you see these kids coming on the bus and they're coming out of homes that, might not be the most, maybe not the most positive environment. So a chaplain's training trains you how to care for children and teachers and how to present yourself and God in a legal way while you provide spiritual care.
Well, we're running low on time, but I want to go back to something you said earlier real quick because I think it's important. There are laws being passed in states like Texas and Florida and other places, but is it true what you're saying is you don't actually need a law to get passed in your legislature? You can do this as a matter of constitutional right?
Absolutely. These laws are not making chaplaincy legal. They're only funding it.
Funding.
Every state in the United States allows people to volunteer on school campuses. So if you get certified as a school chaplain, they cannot deny you just because you are a chaplain.
Well, can a school board say, along comes Joe Smith and he says he's a certified chaplain, and can a school say, no, we don't let private citizens come on campus for any old reason. We don't have any program that'll facilitate that, so go away. Can they do that? Or would it help to have a law in place?
The law helps a lot.
All right.
But every school in the United States allows people to volunteer on campus. So then they'd have to say no volunteers, zero. And the schools need those volunteers. And here's another strange thing is that when schools have catastrophes like school shootings or massive automobile accidents or things like that, they call in school chaplains and they're paid by the government.
Gotcha. Okay, and
so why wait to a catastrophe?
And so I want to. No, it's all right. We're low on time, so I'm trying to rush this a little bit. But we want to use any and all means at our disposal to get chaplains into our schools. So one of those that's real helpful is getting a law passed at your state legislature. You've got a model law, model act that you're working on, and if somebody wants to see how to get that going in their state, they can call you guys or jump on your website and find out more about that information too.
Yes, sir. We have a special legislative ambassador to get right on it and help walk you through what happens. And in many cases, we're already in communication with the legislators in your state.
So what if, man, I don't want to take on the legislature. I just want to take care of my school district. Do you got something to help me?
Yes, sir. We have a very detailed plan of how to communicate with your school board to help them understand the value that a school chaplain brings to a campus.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm sorry, Rocky, we're out of time on today's show, but folks, please go to his website, campuschaplains.org, National School Chaplain Association.org. Learn more. Call them if you have questions. Let's get this spread in every state in America. Rocky, thanks for coming on the show today. God bless you, brother. I'll talk to you again soon. And to everybody who's watching, thank you for watching Truth and Liberty, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.